Previously on Dual Spirit Adventures, we had a mini kayak adventure, rode on to ferries, rode off of ferries, entered the renowned Carretera Austral, did some wild camping on the Carretera Austral, met Gunter, a Guinness World Record holder, bid our goodbyes to Justin, met a new friend Jesus, and the three of us walked into the border security to enter the last country on this trip, Argentina. As mentioned before, Chile and Argentina have organized border management. Hence, my entrance to the final country was pretty uneventful. But what follows this is everything but uneventful. First of all, on the Argentinian side of Patagonia, there is nothing blocking the harrowing wind from the South Pole. All the mountains which block wind are on the Chilean side, which leaves the Argentinian side at a massive disadvantage to ride motorbikes on. I mean, look at the bike lean while going in a straight line. The lean was to counter the ferocity of the wind. It is the weirdest feeling having to lean right while turning left, and I experienced this nowhere else in the world. This weird feeling was the least of my worries because what came next tops it all. You see, Route 40 has a 70-kilometer stretch of deep gravel. To make matters worse, I was passing through here during a gale storm. That's right, with 60 km per hour wind and gusts up to 100 km per hour. I had only read about gale storm, never actually experienced one. Until this day. Imagine riding with this lean over 3-foot deep loose gravel while 100 km/h wind gusts are pushing you off the road. I'm not an expert off-road rider, but the trick is to go fast. Yes, let me explain. If you're going slow, the front end digs into the loose gravel and makes you lose control of the bike. However, if you're on the gas constantly, you unload the front end so it just glides over the loose gravel. The downside being, I was going way faster than my comfort levels on this unstable surface, and occasionally when your front end digs in at these speeds, and you will have to change your underpants the next time you stop. Unfortunately, Jesus had caught one such wind gust, picked his heavy GS up, turned it 90 degrees, and tipped it over. It was impossible for us to pick it back up against the wind. Luckily, there were some friendly locals who stopped to help us. The grueling conditions continued. 2 agonizing hours later, I had never been happier to be back on paved roads again. This was the most difficult 70 kilometers of riding in my entire life. Mercifully, riding further south, road conditions improved and the wind died down. Our destination for the night was El Chalten. But just a stone's throw away from El Chalten, my Tiger ran out of petrol. 20,000 miles since I started my trip in Alaska, this was the first time I had run out of fuel in the middle of the road. Luckily, Jesus had some spare fuel which he kindly lent to help me get back on the road again. Much to my annoyance, there was a gas station just down the road. I mean, literally 2 kilometers after I had run out of fuel, there was a YPF gas station. Although it didn't look like a conventional gas station. I, as I rightfully should, refilled Jesus' spare tank and we reached El Chalten. In El Chalten, I had a task at hand. If I had to change one thing on this trip, that would be my boots. And my camping gear. Okay, that's 2 things. But boots. I wore hiking boots instead of riding boots. Maybe this was a mistake, but I was also traveling on a small budget. After 20,000-ish miles on the road, my Merrell boots had worn out. Had a few too many holes in them and were not waterproof anymore. My solution? Gorilla tape the shit out of them. And the result? Well, looked ugly. Did it work? I guess I will find out. I was going to test out the flashy new duct tape boots to hike Fitz Roy. Fitz Roy is a unique mountain in Patagonia where climbers from all over the world come and attempt to summit it. I wasn't going to do anything crazy, but only enjoy the breathtaking views around this magical place. Fitz Roy is also the mountain in the logo of Patagonia Adventure Gear. The place was absolutely stunning and couldn't have asked for a better day to hike through here. Riding out of Fitz Roy, we kept running into guanacos. Guanacos are native to South America, closely related to llamas. They were running wild and free and were all over Patagonia. Further south, we were approaching El Calafate, another major tourist town in Argentina, and it's famous for this reason: the Perito Moreno glacier. I know the camera is not doing any justice showing the scale of this glacier, but Perito Moreno is one of the very few glaciers in the world where you could walk up close to it and stare at the face of the glacier standing about 100 feet from it. Perito Moreno is also one of the very few glaciers in the world which is actually growing in size. Seeing a glacier up close was definitely one of the coolest things I've ever done. Just as I thought this was literally my best moment of the trip, this happened. Watching a big chunk of glacier crackle and plunge into the ocean. You probably cannot tell from the video here, the water splash was thrown more than 100 feet up in the air, and seconds later this giant chunk of ice dissolved into the ocean like it never existed. It's one of the most violent acts of the nature that I've ever witnessed, and all of this happened right before my eyes. This undoubtedly was the highlight of my trip so far. On our way out of here, we saw a familiar bike on the road. Remember Decky and Laurie, the couple from the UK who I met on Stalrot? Yep, we crossed paths with them again on this lonely road out of the glacier. There were some hugs, exchanging stories from the road, all the troubles we encountered, and then there were more hugs and eventually goodbyes. And we hoped that our paths crossed again further down the road. Anyway, the following day we had to hop back into Chile for a bit and had to stay here for a few days. Because Patagonia, especially the southern part, crisscrossed between the two countries, and it was inevitable to ride through Chile. Also because there was an important national park to ride through, Torres del Paine. Tourists from all over the world flock to Torres del Paine during summer. It is famous for its lakes, glaciers, and unique tower-shaped mountains. Torres del Paine literally means blue towers and is famous for these distinctive granite mountain peaks. Amazing bit of landscape this. Apart from the towers, Torres del Paine has a lot of glacial lakes. I mean, look at it, the mystic peaks and the blue lakes. I was in heaven. Behind the scenes, getting this footage in front of the three peaks wasn't as straightforward as you thought. You see, I set up the camera, turned around, and rode away into the distance. A local tourist noticed a GoPro mounted on a tripod by the side of the road, stopped his car, walked over, and picked it up. He was probably super confused as to why the camera was still recording. For us to arrive on the scene, which created a very awkward moment for him. I was not sure what he was going to do with it, but he put us all in a weird situation indeed. Also, if any of you recognize this hotel, this is the exact hotel Charlie and Evan stayed and charged their electric Harley Davidsons in Torres del Paine in their series The Long Way Up. Anyway, we stuck to Chile as we headed south towards Punta Arenas, the southernmost notable city in Chile. Not only did Punta Arenas brew Austral beer, which was literally served all over Patagonia, it also had this moto cafe where we were welcomed by this good boy. It was the La Guardia Moto Cafe, maintained and owned by Cami, a motocross champion. She was also the artist behind the creativity, produced using motorcycle scrap parts. How cool is this? And the good boy turned out was actually a girl, and was only interested in her treats and couldn't care less about me after she was done eating. Just like most women I have been with in my life. Oh well. Speaking of women, there was a broken mudguard that was hung with Itchy Boots written on it. Itchy Boots is a popular Dutch YouTuber, and apparently she was here a month ago. Beyond Punta Arenas, Patagonia is a mess of border crossings between Chile and Argentina. I used the last bit of Chilean pesos I had on this 10-minute ferry, which took me to the last international border crossing at San Sebastian. You get stamped out right through no man's land and get stamped in. From here on, it was a straight shot to Ushuaia. It was already late in the evening when I came across the sign which said distance to Ushuaia was mere 2 digits. I was high on adrenaline. I put the hammer down to cover the last 100 Ks. After 24,000 miles since I started in Alaska, I had reached my ultimate destination. The clock was way past 9 p.m. It was pitch dark and cold, but the squad made it. A Brazilian biker met us here too, and Jesus surprisingly had a bottle of tequila and also happened to have 4 shot glasses. I guess I shouldn't be surprised considering he's a Mexican. We had a shot to celebrate this milestone, and suddenly I was not cold anymore. The welcome sign was dimly lit. We will have to come here again during the day to take more pictures. We found a nice hotel for the night and settled in warm. After a good night's rest, we headed out to Tierra del Fuego National Park the next day. The park basically has some gravel roads through forest outgrowth, small lakes, and eventually you reach the end of the road. The thing is, Ushuaia might be the southernmost town in the world, but Argentina's Route 3 goes further south into this national park, which is officially the end of the world, the mile zero, and the southernmost you can ever drive to. The road literally just stops, and there is just a bunch of barricade next to a sign which says "End of the World." This is literally the southernmost you can drive to on the entire planet. GPS on my phone looked like this. From turning around at security gates at the BP facility in Prudhoe Bay, Alaska, to reaching the end of the road here in Tierra del Fuego, Argentina, 6 months, 16 countries, and 24,000 miles later, I had ridden the longest highway in the world. I had ridden the Pan American Highway. I took a small stroll through the barricades which led up to the waterfront, which was the land's end. If you guys remember from episode 2, I took a pebble from the Arctic Ocean and I kept it in captive since Prudhoe Bay, Alaska, and it's made its way with me all the way to Ushuaia, Argentina. And back there you see the bay leading to the South Atlantic Ocean, eventually leading to the Antarctic Ocean. So it's now time to relieve this pebble of its captivity. It's very symbolic. As I set my camera and sat down thinking, as the waves of the South Atlantic Ocean softly brushed against the sharp rocks of Tierra del Fuego, I gazed at the distant mountains and thought how crazy this adventure was. Every country was unique, every day was different. 4 months on the road felt like 2 years. Right from the frigid waters of Arctic Ocean to stunning blue glaciers, to all the delicious food, to overly complicated border crossings, to warm-hearted, helpful people, friends I made for life, all the challenges on the road, to incredibly dazzling scenery. The Pan American expedition just puts on a show. You name it, I experienced it. Everything a part of this big adventure. Apart from this, I visited the southernmost post office in the world and sent a letter out to my family back home. The restrooms here had exaggerated urination symbols. Took a boat tour to south of Ushuaia, which promised whale spotting and some penguin spotting. On the way back, we saw a vessel which was returning from an Antarctic expedition. How cool would that be? More like how cold would that be? Just as I was considering a ride on the Antarctic expedition, this was March 2020 and COVID scare had reached the southernmost town in the world as well. We were told that Argentina is completely shutting down in the next couple of days, and all foreign travelers were either asked to quarantine or fly out with immediate effect. Shit. Ushuaia had an international airport, but getting my bike out of here would be tough. My best bet was to get to Buenos Aires, a more likely chance for both me and my motorcycle, but the capital city of Argentina was 3,000 kilometers away, and the route crisscrossing in and out of Chile. Double shit. The following morning, Greg and I, being optimistic, set out to cover the 3,000 Ks to Buenos Aires. Setting out early in the morning meant we got to see the views which were missed coming in, as it was dark. You can clearly tell from this footage that we were in a hurry to cover some ground. We had the throttle pinned, passing open vastness, monoliths, crazy weather patterns, dinosaurs, and police roadblocks. Basically, we took 4 days to cover 3,000 Ks, and the capital city was almost a ghost town thanks to COVID scare. We found a hostel to stay in and started to figure out the return to home plan. I booked a flight out of Buenos Aires departing in the next 2 days, and Greg in 3 days. And for the bikes, unfortunately, there was no way out for them, at least not yet. Luckily, our hostel was close to the airport, and the owner of the hostel let us store our bikes for about $50 a month. That worked out well, actually. We washed our bikes thoroughly, cleaning out every inch of dirt that had accumulated over 24,000 miles. I started packing my stuff for the flight ahead, carefully segregating items I can check in versus items I cannot. I rode my bike one last time within the parking lot, not knowing when I'll be riding it again. Parked in the spot, put the bike cover over, again, not knowing how long would she stay there. Bid my goodbyes to Greg. It was a pleasure riding with you, sir. I hope you achieve your dream of riding around the world and riding back to New Zealand. And I also hope our paths will cross again in the future. Perhaps I tag along on your round the world trip, but for now, I'll fly home to Michigan. Traversing through 2 continents, my travel itch has been completely and thoroughly satisfied. This is how the route looked like after having explored a third of the planet. After this, I'm okay to go home. I'm okay to stay in quarantine for a while. Almost a year later, when COVID subsided a little, I finally had the opportunity to get my bike flown out of Buenos Aires. And there she was, wrapped in plastic but very much in one piece. United Air Cargo got it to New Jersey and I had to put it on the back of the truck to get her home. I drove 22 hours straight to New Jersey and back, and me tiger was home. My friends helped me unload the bike, and finally, after 1 year and 8 months since its departure in 2019, my bike touched Michigan soil for the first time, with a long list of maintenance to do. This concludes my Alaska to Argentina series. As far as Dual Spirit Adventures is concerned, if world doesn't get blown apart, there are bigger and grander adventures in the works. So consider subscribing if you haven't. Also, consider subscribing given the hard work that has gone into this 25-part series and possibly the only YouTube channel featuring the complete Pan-American vlog. For now, it's a goodbye from Dual Spirit Adventures. Until next time, cheers.